We're joined now by HuskerOnline Sean Callahan. Sean, good morning. Yesterday, again, Nebraska announces Dana Holgorsen will be an offensive analyst for the Huskers going forward. What was your initial gut reaction to that news yesterday morning?
Yeah, they technically haven't officially announced it as a school, but they confirmed. The sources have confirmed, but there hasn't been like a press release, so to speak. I mean, in that form. So I want to make that clear.
Yep.
But they, look, their offense is struggling. I mean, you can go back from the game against Colorado when it was 28-0. I mean, even the two games they've won, the Rutgers game and the Purdue game, there are a lot of moments in that game where they could have lost. I mean, 3 blocked kicks against Purdue, 2 blocked punts. That's a different game at that point. So their offense has regressed. They haven't been able to have the consistency they need to do what they need. And they met with Dana Holgorsen in January, just didn't work out, and here he is. So yeah, it was an interesting development, but I think one that Matt Rule recognizes, like, hey, something needs to be done here. We can't just go status quo the last month of the year and expect things to play out and see how it goes.
Sean, Holgorsen has been here before. You have a good handle on a pretty good handle on the previous dalliance with Holgorsen. Was that in January?
Yeah, he was here on January 6th for it was like a wrestling meet, but he was here for like a whole weekend, spent time. And at that point, the position that Glenn Thomas has was still open. Glenn Thomas was still over a month away from taking that job. So It's unclear, but Dana was here, and I think his aspiration was he wanted to be a play caller. He wasn't just going to, and it was close to when he had just left West Virginia and Houston, his previous 2 jobs, as a head coach, and to jump right into Nebraska in a role like that at that point, I don't know if he was ready yet. But clearly now I think he's got aspirations to want to be a head coach or get back into it, and he's here now, and it's unclear, if he was even still at TCU. I've had some people tied to Dana say that he might have not been there the last few weeks and moved on from that opportunity. So he's a really low level analyst position. It wasn't like he was in a high profile role at TCU either. Okay,
Sean, the other question that people have right now, well, there's a lot of questions. I mean, we don't even know the scope of his job at this point, but if he were to evolve into the coordinator role, a lot of people are asking me, is this Rule moving to an air raid?
I think ultimately Matt Rule would have a big voice in that, but they got to run the ball. I mean, that's the key. I mean, no matter what, you have to run the ball in this league with a physical presence. And you can do, Wisconsin's doing that now. They still run it, and they've struggled obviously this year. But I mean, there'd be some concepts of that. I mean, you got Dylan Raiola, and you've got to have a guy in an offense that can let this once in a generation type of quarterback thrive. And things have not been going in that direction the last month with what they've been doing on offense. But that's a question for Matt Rule. And we're not going to get that answer this month because Marcus Satterfield technically is still the offensive coordinator. But Dana Holgorsen being in Lincoln, like you and I talk step off air. I mean, this is rare. You just have never really seen something like this happen anywhere. There's not a lot of comparative, and I'm sure Coach Bush has had some good insight on this too. This is just not something like, kind of like what they did at this place or that place. No, this is kind of a unique thing that there's not a lot of comparative data to know what this all means.
3 games to go. 3 games to go.
So my Sean Callahan. Sean, speaking of Dylan, again, very good in September. Good stats. Again, Illinois, even though they lost, was decent in that game. Since then, it's been rough for him. What have you noticed when you've watched him since September with his throwing motion and everything in general?
Well, teams have obviously defended him differently. You don't see just the drop zones. I mean, the first half of the Illinois game to me was kind of the peak of Dylan Raiola. He put on a clinic, and then Illinois made adjustments. They started bringing the heat. They started doing some things differently. But once teams started locking up the 2 perimeter receivers, Banks and Naor for Nebraska, things just haven't been the same for them on offense. They just haven't, when they play that tight man-to-man on those guys. Even the Purdue game, they drew all those pass interference penalties that day up in West Lafayette. But we just haven't seen those guys, their production. I mean, right now, they're the 3rd and 4th overall receivers right now in receptions. And the first month of the year, they were on a trajectory path to be the leading receivers on this team by a wide margin. And now they're third and fourth, which kind of tells you they've been just taken out of the offense as well.
Yeah, when you go back, Sean, to when they came here in December, right? It was December. We thought, I mean, you would naturally think, oh, there's your two leading receivers. And they haven't played like that. I mean, Banks has been largely silent the last 3 or 4 games. So, yeah, it hasn't worked out that way. Now, what about Phil Snow? What's that name mean to you?
That one's hard to read because of his age and where he's at in his career. Does he want back in at a full level, or is this more of kind of an analyst role? And you can have high paid analysts now. I mean, the rules are so much different where, you can have an analyst make more than a position coach. There's nothing that says that you can't do that. So, it's in the recruiting on the road thing is not what it used to be. You can send non-full-time 10 guys out on the road. So the rules now kind of make that hire something interesting too, because you can do a lot more with it now than you could do a year ago.
You got time for one more, Sean?
I got to get on the next one, guys. You got to call me earlier.
Yeah, Jake. We got to call you earlier.
I said something to Jake.
Sean, sorry about that. We'll get you longer next week.
I give you all the time.
We got Sean on, and Jake doesn't call.
Thanks, Sean. Sean Callahan.